Friday, March 8th, 2024, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So we're going to look at fighting for freedom and democracy, right? That's what President Biden said yesterday in his State of the Union address. He also said America's economy is the envy of the world. I wonder if he's looked at the national debt rate lately and all the huge budget deficits that the United States is running currently and is forecast to keep running according to the Congressional Budget Office. And I'm not trying to denigrate America or Americans. Unfortunately, there's that saying, I hate my government, but I love my country. And I think that applies to a lot of you in the United States. And it applies to a lot of us here in the UK as well, I would say. And yeah, we're going to look at this concept of freedom and democracy that America supposedly spreads around the world. And we're going to look at the distraction that while they distract the masses with this concept that they have to keep helping Ukraine and defeat the dictator that Putin is, they're actually stealing your savings. They are indebting your children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And we're going to look at both all these factors today. And one thing I would say, though, and you don't have to take my word or believe me, but it's my opinion that the biggest risk for savers right now is having fiat dollars, fiat pounds, fiat euros, fiat anything in the bank. And of course, you need some to pay your monthly bills. Of course, I'm not saying you have to get rid of all your fiat currency, but for those who have huge balances of fiat currency, I'm sure they're very concerned right now because we're seeing the currency's totally meltdown. And it's been something that's been happening, of course, for many decades, but now it seems to be accelerating versus real money, i.e. gold. Silver, of course, is lagging. So I reiterate that I think it's, yeah, we're at that juncture where things could get really wild. And I don't really care too much about the price. The price of gold and silver, unfortunately, is just an indication of how badly they're trashing your currency. And President Biden or Janet Yellen might say our economy is growing at great pace, but they don't tell you that all of that is because of the debt that they're incurring. Yes, the Federal Reserve is kind of keeping policy kind of tight. It's not really tight. If it was tight, the economy wouldn't be growing. But it's the fiscal policy that's keeping it going, and that's why I say it's a great risk to have fiat currency. Back to freedom and democracy, and I think most of the world outside the West doesn't believe in that rubbish of America bringing freedom and democracy to the world. Not even World War I and World War II were fought for freedom and democracy. They were fought for dollars and control, right? That's what they're all bankers' wars, and this war in Ukraine is another bankers' war or military industrial complex war. And if you don't believe me, read War is a Racket. It's a really short pamphlet from Brigadier General Smedley Butler. I've got it here in my library, small library. You can find it and read it if you don't believe me. So I just want to go quickly through some of the incidents where America helped freedom and democracy in the last, well, since World War II. Well, one that comes to mind is 1954 and Iran. Iran had a democratically elected government and the prime minister Mossadegh, but he wanted to nationalize British petroleum company in Persia or Iran. So what did they do? Well, the CIA fomented a coup and brought in the Shah of Iran, who was a stooge for the CIA and MI6 up until 1979. And when he started flexing his muscles and realizing, oh, wait a second, they're telling me what to do. I should be a sovereign country. Well, they got rid of him and brought in the Ayatollah Khomeini, and I remember that well. And at the time, the Iranians kept the hostages, didn't they? And they released them just hours after President Reagan was inaugurated. And there's a lot of material and research done on that history that the CIA was in touch with the Ayatollah and the revolutionaries in Iran, telling them, and paying them off to keep those hostages there, to make Jimmy Carter look weak, and so it would help Reagan, really Bush win the election. Really, Bush was in charge there. We saw later with the assassination attempt by Hinckley. So that's a lot of freedom and democracy there in just one country, and you wonder why Iran now is so much against what the U.S. does. Well, and I'll go also to 1964, and it's weird because that's the year I was born, and that's the country where I was born, Brazil. The CIA as well. Brazil had a president that was more left-leaning, and they got rid of him and brought the military regime in Brazil in 1964. So that's another example there for freedom and democracy. And Brazil had a military regime up until 1985. And one thing I would add is that on December 31st, 1964, the Brazilian Central Bank was created. Is that a coincidence? Maybe the previous presidents were not playing ball. They didn't want to create a central bank. Who knows? So these are two examples. I could go with more. I guess Vietnam. They're so concerned about freedom and democracy in Vietnam that they bombed and killed, I don't know, hundreds of thousands of civilians. That's the third example. What about Panama? They were so concerned about freedom and democracy that they had to go there and get rid of their CIA-implanted drug dealer president, Noriega, and bomb a neighborhood in Panama and kill over 1,000 civilians. Freedom and democracy. What about modern day? Well, let's go to Iraq, right? Freedom and democracy for Iraqis on a lie. How many people were killed? Well, more, hundreds of thousands. Afghanistan, well, that was a huge failure. 20 years of trying to bring freedom and democracy and no result. And now Ukraine, of course, another coup orchestrated by the CIA and Victoria Nuland, who resigned recently. She helped bring down a democratically elected government in Ukraine, and was even giving out cookies, apparently. Well, I saw the photo. Someone did a video about that, to the insurgents in Kiev. So there you go, freedom and democracy. And That's all I have to say about that. What about now? You know why they're distracting with you with this noble idea that you're bringing freedom and democracy to the world. They are totally trashing your currency, and that's why there's so many people out there who can't afford uh, the cost of living anymore, who are suffering. And it's not just the general public, but also companies trying to keep their prices down. What do? Well, they shrink the package. And of course, President Biden has blamed these greedy companies, right? He doesn't blame the federal government for spending trillions and wasting billions in bringing freedom and democracy to other countries, does he? So I've done some calculations here, and I've done the calculations for the US and the UK. I was going to do a video just about the UK, but I think it's important that I talk to you about this. And it's to do with the money supply and the amount of gold our countries have. And you can do this for other countries as well. But I'm going to stick to the US and the UK because most of my viewers are in the US and the UK. So it's very easy to do. So you can go under gold reserve on Wikipedia and you go through the numbers here. The United States supposedly has 8,133.5 metric tons of gold, right? Sounds good. It's about 261 million, 261.5 million troy ounces. Of course, those holdings have never been audited. And we don't know how many times the bullion banks have lent that out. And then you go down, unfortunately, in ranking. And yes, Gordon Brown got rid of half the UK's gold reserves back in the day. And you might think, oh, it's all his fault, partly. But when we come to the numbers, you realize that it wouldn't have mattered that much if he had kept those other 300 metric tons. So yeah, the UK has 300 metric tons. That equates to around 10 million troy ounces. So this will just show you, and the calculation that I did is kind of mind-blowing. And you'll see what I mean. So now the other number for the calculation is the money supply. So I took the US M2 money supply, and as you can see, it's $20.78 trillion, trillion with a T. The UK equivalent, and I think we've got M2 or M3 in the UK, that's like 3.5 trillion. So I've used those numbers, and what this is going to show us is how little backing our currencies have to real money, i.e. gold and silver, and that's why they're losing value at a rate of knots, and it's accelerating. And then we're going to do a little exercise, and I'm going to use my Hewlett-Packard calculator to see where the price of gold should be to have some kind of backing, decent backing for the currency. Some would argue we need 100% backing. We'll go to that as well. And I agree. Just using real, eliminate fractional reserve. I think that's a fraud, but it's allowed to take place. So let's go with the UK first. So you can see there, the figure on the left, and there are a lot of zeros, I know. That's the 10 million ounces times the price of gold, and a few days ago it was at 1670. Right now it might be at 1680, but you take that, 1670 times 10 million ounces, and you divide it by the money supply there, the M3, you get the proportion. So times 100. So the UK money supply there, you get 0.4734% backing. So I've read in many books and about the 19th century, and when Britain was on the gold standard up until 1914, the UK banking system kept roughly 30% backing, or a third backing of gold to the money supply. And even if you use, though, let's say M1, which is just cash and coins in circulation, that number is still huge. But we'll look at M3 first. And some people will argue that M3 might not even have enough of the money supply, because a lot of gilts and treasuries are almost like money, right? They're very liquid. So what this means here is that if you wanted a 33% backing, let's have a look what kind of price we would need. So all I do is 30 divided by 0.4734, and I get 69.7 times. So if we take the current price of gold, and I'm gonna, well, let's take that 1670. I know it's a bit higher right now, but if we multiply that by 1670, and that's the price of gold in pounds, well, that would give us a price of gold of 116,413 pounds per troy ounce. Am I trying to tell you that that's the price that gold should go to? Not really. What I'm trying to tell you is that compared to the 19th century, when this country was under a gold standard and its economy was rapidly industrializing and the middle class was growing, the currency was so much better. And that's why I said in the beginning, the biggest risk is holding this currency that is so diluted. The example would be, putting water in the milk, and just a little bit, right? And selling it for the same price as if you hadn't put the water, and then you keep doing it, and eventually you're just going to be selling water. And this is pretty much where we are right now in terms of the pound. So let's go to the, well, I don't even need to do 100% backing, do I? Because it's a stupid number. It's almost £500,000 per troy ounce. But let's go to the US. So what I did for the US, of course, is I multiplied 261.5 ounces approximately by 2,160. I think that's where we are right now, the price of gold. And I got this huge number here, 565 billion, 101 million, and divide that into the money supply of 21.781 trillion pounds. Multiply by 100, and you get a backing of 2.6% almost, which is a lot better than the UK. But let's say you use 40%. And why 40%? Well, because up until 1968, I think by law, the dollar had to be backed 40% by gold. So you take 40 and you divide it by 2.6 to make it easy. And it's 15.38. So you multiply that by 15.38, enter 2160, and you get $33,220 per troy ounce. Not as bad as the UK. The dollar, and that's if the US has all that gold, of course. And if you do it for 100% backing, of course, you multiply that by 2.5, you get $83,000. So again, I'm not saying that's where gold's going to go. What I'm trying to tell you is that our currencies are being diluted at a rate of knots. And that's why I think, and some of you might say this is by design, and it could be, but it doesn't take away from the fact that this is happening, and that's why I make these videos. But the people behind the scenes who are really in charge, they know this is happening, right? And maybe this is why they're pushing for so much conflict against nations like Russia and China And why is that? Well, because it gives them a bit more time to keep inflating the system. They create an enemy, and they convince the general public to keep allowing them to debase their currency in order to protect you, right? In order to export freedom and democracy around the world. And here I'll go back to George Washington, and what George Washington said is that the United States needs to avoid entangling alliances with foreign nations and monarchies and lead by example, not try to impose its system on other people, but maybe hope that the example of the United States encourages other nations to follow them, not to impose it by force. So I'll stop at that now. And yes, if you're worried about your fiat currency reserves in the bank, maybe you should think about getting some gold and silver. And I have some affiliates, and you can check below in the description. I have one in the UK and two in the United States. And if you do contact them, make sure you tell them I sent you there. So let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. And of course, today we got the non-farm payroll jobs data. It's another statistic that the Fed, the Treasury, Wall Street use to kind of manipulate the perception of markets. So, yeah, it has an impact in the short term on markets, but over the long term, in my opinion, what you need to realize is that the currency that backs all these assets, that stocks, bonds, derivatives, commodities, is becoming worth less and less and less, and that's what you need to keep in mind. And what you do about that, I'm trying to help you here a little bit, but you need to help yourself and do some research as well. So it's 8:39 a.m. London time. Spot gold is 2164. It's up about $3, and it's weird looking at the price of gold with 21 handle or 2,100, but that's where it is. The high overnight has been 2169, and the low has been 2153. Silver, I said yesterday that 2450 was going to be a key resistance. Well, that was the high yesterday. The high overnight is 2454. Right now we're at 2444, up 12 cents. Stock market, the futures are pretty much unchanged across the board, so I won't go through them. And even the currencies as well, they're pretty steady. So we won't waste any time going through them either. We're going to look at the commodities then. The other commodities, well, we got WTI crude up 1%. That's approaching 80. It's at 79.28. Brent is at 83.32. So yeah, commodities racing ahead. Not surprising when the currency in which these commodities are priced is losing value so quickly. They go up because it takes more currency units to buy those commodities. Platinum, that's down a little bit overnight, $3. It's trading around 917. High grade copper though, that's perking up a little bit. We're almost back up to $4. Is at 394, and that's high grade copper. It's up 0.25%. So I'm going to stop right here, and yeah, wish you all a very good day and a very good weekend. Take care. Bye.